What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with my hands-on and first impressions video of the Motorola Moto G Pure. So let's get started. Now the G Pure is yet another budget device from Motorola, and it is being offered factory unlocked, which is this version of the phone, and you can get it from a variety of different prepaid carriers. So for example, you can get this phone right now at Metro by T-Mobile. It's also being offered at Boost Mobile, and I'm not sure, but I think it's being offered at Cricket as well. And I'm sure as time goes on, this phone will be offered at more and more prepaid carriers. Now, typically, if you buy the phone through a prepaid carrier, you can save quite a bit of money because those carriers tend to offer discounts if you're switching in from another carrier. So definitely something to consider. Of course, if you do get this phone factory unlocked like I did, then you do get the maximum flexibility with being able to use the phone on really any carrier that you want. But essentially, if you want to see the most up-to-date pricing, take a look at the link in the video description, as I'm sure that is bound to change as time goes on. Now, before I show you a variety of different things about the Moto G Pure, let's take a quick look and see what all comes included here in the box. So you can see right here, Moto G Pure, there's the Motorola logo. Then on the back of the box, just some regulatory information. We have some very basic literature here. We also have a SIM card removal tool. We have a 10-watt wall adapter for charging. And we have a USB-C cable for charging and data transfer. So we do get pretty much everything we need here to get started included in the box. Now, I'm not completely sure which device, if any, the Moto G Pure is replacing in Motorola's lineup. But this phone is pretty similar to the Moto G Play 2021. And I will be comparing this phone to that phone in an upcoming video, so definitely stay tuned for that. But essentially, this phone and the Moto G Play 2021 are almost the same actually, with really the only main difference being the processor. But again, I'll save that for a separate video, and we'll really get into detail about the differences between those two phones. Now with the Moto G Pure, we're getting a 6.5-inch display. So it is a pretty big display here, despite this being a lower-end budget device. Now the display itself is IPS LCD. It is a 720p display. We're getting a PPI of 270. We're getting a 20:9 aspect ratio, so a more narrow but tall form factor here with the device, which is pretty common nowadays with pretty much any Android smartphone that's been released. And we're getting an 80.6% screen-to-body ratio, so in general, pretty small bezels, but you can see here the bottom bezel is a little bit on the thicker side, and of course we do have a water drop notch on the top of the device. Now typically I'm not a huge fan of this form factor, but considering that this is a very affordable device in an entry-level phone, I'm totally fine with it. And as far as the display itself goes, I do feel like it is pretty bright and clear, and even though it is 720p, things do look decently crisp here, and when you're looking at the display, it definitely doesn't seem like a bad display by any means. With OLED and AMOLED displays, I do prefer those. They look a lot more premium, they have better viewing angles and colors, but again, for what this is, the display is pretty good here. Now, in that notch up top here, we do have a 5-megapixel front-facing camera, and stay tuned for my full review about this device, as I'll be showing you a variety of different photo and video samples from it. Now, with the Moto G Pure, we're getting 32 gigabytes of internal storage, and we're also getting microSD card expansion. So I do appreciate that we do have the ability to add more storage here to the phone, because in 2021, 32 gigs really isn't a whole lot. Now, if you want to use this device mostly for phone calls, text messages, occasional photos and videos, and maybe a moderate amount of apps, but not too many apps, then I suppose 32 gigs will work for you. But keep in mind that apps seem to be getting larger and larger in file size, and I'm sure as time goes on, that issue is going to be even more prevalent. So I do wish we got 64 gigs instead of 32, but I also think for the majority of people that end up getting this phone, 32 gigs probably will be adequate, and then having that microSD card expansion does at least give you the ability to add a bit more storage. Now there's no wireless charging with the Moto G Pure, and that's probably not very surprising since it is an entry-level phone, but we do have a fingerprint sensor on the back of the device. So we'll give that fingerprint sensor a try right now. Very quick, one more time. There we go, definitely accurate, so definitely happy with that. Now in addition to the fingerprint sensor, we also do have face unlock, so I do appreciate that we do have multiple methods for getting into the phone. Now taking a look at the cameras on the back of the device, we do have a dual camera setup. We have a 13 megapixel main camera and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera that does assist with portrait mode. So we do have portrait mode for both the rear and front cameras with this device, but as you can see here, there is no ultra wide angle camera. So if you are looking to get a device with an ultra wide camera, or maybe you currently have one and you enjoy using that feature, then unfortunately you are not getting that here with the Moto G Pure. So definitely something to keep in mind there. Now here's how things look on the camera app on the device. So again, not too many different features here, especially because we don't have really that many cameras on the actual phone itself, compared to maybe some other higher end Android phones. But you can see, there we go. Here's the viewfinder. Here's how things look. Then from here, we can access some of the other settings available. We can also go over to this tab down here and access portrait mode. So with portrait mode, you get those nice blurred out backgrounds for both the rear and front cameras. There's me right there. So again, you can see even in this preview, the background is blurred out. So pretty nice. And then as far as video recording goes, it does max out at 1080p at 30 FPS for both the rear and front cameras. So in general, obviously I'm going to test this out quite a bit more prior to the review, but it does seem like the camera quality is at least what I would expect from a phone in this category. Now with the Moto G Pure, we're getting 3 GB of RAM and we're getting the MediaTek Helio G25 processor. So 3 gigs of RAM is pretty good, I suppose, for a lower end budget phone like this one. And the MediaTek Helio G25 is definitely not the worst processor from MediaTek, but it's also not that great. I did run a Geekbench 5 benchmark test with the phone, and here's the scores that I got. So I got a single core score of 133 and a multi-core score of 497. So what I recommend doing is running this test on your current phone and then compare your scores to these scores, because of course, if you're not comparing these scores to anything, then they don't really mean anything. So if the current device that you have has higher scores than this phone, then don't expect this phone to be a performance upgrade necessarily. So I find that to be helpful in certain situations when deciding whether a phone is worth upgrading from another device. Now with this device, we are getting a 4,000 milliamp hour battery, and we are getting 10 watt fast charging. So 10 watt fast charging isn't necessarily the fastest out there, but it is better than maybe being limited at 5 watts. And then of course we do have that 10 watt charger included in the box, which is really fantastic as well. Now the software here with the phone is Android 11. So if you are familiar with using a phone that has essentially stock Android, you're going to feel very familiar here. Now we do have Android 12 out right now, and Motorola really doesn't have a great reputation with updating their lower end devices to newer versions of Android. So I don't know necessarily if we are going to be getting Android 12, and if we do, it will certainly be a long time from now. So essentially, if you buy this device, do not expect to get newer versions of Android with it. That being said though, I do expect this phone to get at least security patches for a decent amount of time. Another drawback with this device is that there is no NFC. So if you do like to make mobile contactless payments, which I know is something that's becoming more and more popular, you won't be able to do it here with this device. So keep that in mind. Now for some people, that's not a deal breaker at all, as I know that it really depends on personal preference whether or not you even want to use that feature. But now that we've gone over the major specifications with the Moto G Pure, let's take a closer look at the hardware here of the phone. So again, I talked quite a bit already about the display. In general, a pretty decent display, nothing too special either, but it gets the job done. Taking a look at the left side of the device, we have the slot for the microSD card and SIM card. That's it. This phone is made completely out of plastic besides the display, which is glass. Then on the right side of the phone, we have the power button, volume down and volume up. Then up top here, we have the 3.5mm headphone jack. We also have the noise canceling microphone. And then on the bottom of the device, we have the microphone, USB-C port for charging and data transfer, and the speaker. And then on the back side of the phone, it is pretty minimalist here. We have that dual camera setup along with the flash, and then we have the fingerprint sensor. Now I do actually like this texture on the back of the device. It isn't premium by any means. It really is kind of just a cheap plastic, but I also do prefer that it has kind of this wavy, matte finish versus being glossy, because I feel like the phones that have glossy backs always just pick up a bunch of fingerprints and just don't look good. It does at least look presentable, and it does get the job done. In general, this phone has a pretty practical design, really nothing special or overly exciting about it, But if you are looking to get a budget device, I suppose you just want to get a phone that works, can get the job done for some of the more basic tasks, nothing too fancy. This really seems like it would be an ideal phone for someone that just wants a phone, not necessarily something that is too complicated or has a ton of features. But in general, I think the Moto G Pure seems like a pretty decent device for what it is. Again, of course, don't compare this to a flagship Android device like the Galaxy S21, for example, or an iPhone 13 Pro Max. This is in a whole different category. This is kind of at the bottom tier of the market, which again, there's a lot of demand for affordable smartphones. So in that sense, the Motorola Moto G Pure seems like a pretty solid device from the company. But again, I gotta spend a bit more time with it, and I hope you're looking forward to my full review about the phone. But this is the Moto G Pure. I hope you enjoyed the video. This is Kevin here, and I will see you in the next one.